everybody, Brian here from quantlabs.net. We just did a webinar with Simon Allen, creator of open source Trade Manager, all done in Java, true open source. This project's amazing. I didn't know he's also an active trader, which really helps out the development of the software. It's a 2-hour video. I hope you like it. We've got some other webinars coming up, some very powerful ones. All I can say is when you watch it, you'll be going, woo, from Ric Flair. Over and out. Hopefully this will help you out. Talk to you later. Brian, over and out. See ya. Hey everybody, it's Brian here from quantlabs.net. I've got Simon here, who's our presenter for his open source trading platform, which I plan to use. Go ahead, Simon. Let's take a look at what you got.
Hi, I'm Simon Allen, and what I do is I'm a full-time trader. Before I was a full-time trader, I'm based here in Silicon Valley, by the way. I used to be a technical architect, developing software applications for various startups and large and small firms and consultancies. So my work background really is highly technical. I started trading probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I was introduced to technical trading by a friend of mine who was a CFO. And that got me interested. Once I got to the stage where I was making more money in the first hour and a half of the day trading than I was going out working 60, 70 hours as a technical architect, you can imagine I dumped that job and started trading full time. Probably a year into the trading full time, I was looking at what I was doing from a technical perspective and decided, as I have an engineering background, why don't I try and automate what I do manually trading. And I'll tell you what sort of trading I do. I trade stocks primarily, and my focus is on stocks that gap. So when I say a stock that gap, I mean a stock that its opening price for the current day is different to its closing price from the previous day. And I'm looking for technical patterns in those gaps that will give me a pretty good idea of what the stock's going to do in the first 30 minutes of the day. I try and trade. I get up at 6 because I'm on the West Coast. 6:30 the market opens, which is 9:30 New York time, and 90% of the days I am complete by 7:10 in the morning. Sometimes I may have positions that I open around 10 o'clock the reversal time. If I've got a stock that's so extending and so tempting, I'll open a position and trade it for a bit there. But that's basically what I do. Trade stocks, first hour of the day, try and get finished in 30-40 minutes of the day, and I am done trading. So when I built this product, my original goal was to just implement a very simple strategy that was based on what I do, with not all the rules that I do, obviously, because it's so complicated in terms of what I look at in market internals, etc., and patterns and stuff. So I tried to get one strategy that I could implement that would get me into the position and get me out of the position. So that was the goal of this project when it started. I open sourced the project basically because I needed somewhere to keep the source code, and I didn't want to keep it locally. So I used Google Code. I put it out there in the hopes that other people would look at it and say, hey, this is a good idea. And over the 3 or 4 years it's been out there, I've had a lot of contact from other people who trade a similar style that I do, but may not be trading stocks. So I've had commodity traders, index traders, futures traders, and currency traders. So I've introduced all the attributes and features needed to allow you to run those types of contracts. So that's what I trade. That's how I trade. I'm going to go down the slides now. So this is a quick slide. I won't spend much time on it, but this is what I do, bearing in mind on West Coast time, not East Coast time. But I get up at 10 past 6, pre-market scans to find the gappers. The broker I use is Interactive Brokers, and fortunately Interactive Brokers have a good Java, well, they have a good API, and they implement that API in Visual Basic, C++, Java, and I think they've got a couple of other languages out there that they implement their API at, which allows you to connect to the client. And it does have some restrictions. When you're using their API, for instance, you can't run market data for more than 60 stocks concurrently. They also have some restrictions on how many times you can go through their server to retrieve data. So if you have a 60 stock limit, you can't, for instance, go and get 60 and then quickly go and get another 60. They make you wait 10 minutes before you go and subscribe to the next 60. So they have all these rules around it because they don't want you basically using their client as a gateway into the market for all 2,000 stocks and run it as a scanner. I think that's their particular focus, is not to allow you to use the client side as a scanner across the whole market, which is why they have these restrictions. Once I've got my list of gappers, I grade them. So I give them a tier. My tiers 1 through 3 on whether they're good or bad. And when I say good or bad, it's whether the probability is that the stock's going to move in the direction that I think it's going to move. And those probabilities are derived by me doing a hell of a lot of statistical analysis on chart patterns over the years, which let me know what are good and what's bad. Check for last minute gaps, switch to 2-minute charts, well 1-minute charts actually. I run, when I'm trading in the first 15-20 minutes, I trade off of 1-minute charts, then I move to 2-minute charts, and then about 10 past 7 I'm on 5-minute charts, and after about the first hour and a half I'm on 15-minute charts. Not that any of that matters, because as I say, 90% of my days I am finished after 40 minutes of the market being opened. At the end of the day, I go out and I download all the earnings that are coming out for that evening, because you'll find most of the really good gaps that are created in the market are created by earnings, because it's a known news item that's going to come out. Everyone knows what date the earnings are going to come out, and so a lot of people are focused on that stock the next day, which is why you see volumes of 4 to 10 times on stocks where it's their earnings days versus their average for, say, 30 to 60 days before that date. So it gives the volatility in the stock. Grading gaps, I'm not going to go into this, but this slideshow, by the way, if you download the application and look under the docs, you'll see this slideshow I'm showing you now. It's actually checked in, so you can read through how I grade gappers if you're interested. But it's not really relevant to what we're going to be talking about. Here we have implemented features of the Trade Manager. So let me quickly run through these. You can download historical data from Trader Workstation. Supports time frames from 30 seconds through to daily bars, so we're talking candlestick bars here. Interactive Brokers, by the way, only keep 1 calendar year of data out there for stocks. After that, they purge it from the database. What I have, if you download the sample database that's out there on the website, you can download it. And what you'll find in there is, I think I'm up to 2.5 years of gapping stocks that I would have possibly traded each day. It's basically my gap list each day. I put it in the Trade Manager, and I've been keeping a database full of 1-minute bar data going back for 2.5 years. So you can, and I've also run the back testing against that, so you can see the results of a simple strategy on how it will work. It just gives you some sample data if you need it. You can also download data from Yahoo Finance. Their data is very limited in what you can get from them, so go to the Yahoo site and read that. The candlestick charts that I use in my application uses the J3Charts library. I'm going to be replacing that in future because I'm rewriting the whole UI front end in JavaFX, and JavaFX has a much more fully featured UI framework, including things for doing charts, multimedia. Basically, JavaFX is the new version of Swing. Swing will be deprecated, JavaFX will take over, and they introduced JavaFX so it had the capabilities to allow people to do gaming and things like that with Java. So it'll be a lot more sophisticated, and the UI will be a lot more interesting to look at. The charts update every 5 seconds, and the reason I do that is the way interactive brokers work is you can subscribe to a contract and it will give you 5-second bars. So what I do is whenever you say, you've got say 10 or 15 stocks you're interested in trading that day, you log in, connect to Interactive Broker Trade Workstation before the market starts, then you kick off the 15 or so stocks you want to trade, and when you kick them off, you can tell it you want to run a strategy or you don't want to run a strategy. So you can either just subscribe to data or subscribe to data and run strategies. When it subscribes to the data, it does two things. It subscribes to the 5-second bars, and those 5-second bars then get built into the time frame that you're trading. So if your strategy is written to trade off of 5-minute bars and you're looking for specific patterns and support and resistance areas on a 5-minute bar chart, then it takes the 5-second bars and it builds your 5-minute bar. As it's building the bar, you can also tell it to subscribe to market data, and what that does is fires bids, asks, and the last in every time it changes. And whenever those come in, what my app does is it says if the last price is outside of the current high-low of the forming bar, then it's going to update that bar. So you'll see the chart change if the last price is outside the high-low of the forming bar. And the reason I do that is you can imagine if you're trading something like IBM that has absolutely huge volume, there's thousands and thousands of lasts coming in at the same price before that price ticks over one tick to a different price, and I'm not interested in them. And as I say, most people using my app are trading strategies that are based on time frames that are above 1-minute bars. So this isn't an app you want to use for high frequency trading or any other trading where you want to look at stuff down in the milliseconds. It's not based for that, and the people that are technical trading tend to be trading like I am. Usually, most of the novices I get who come to training who just start learning it tend to be trading 5-minute bars and tend not to enter positions until after 9:35. And the reason they do that and teach that is because in the first 5 minutes you've got all the idiot retailers who have put market orders in overnight who are getting filled all over the place. You tend to find that first 5-minute bar, the first 5 minutes of the market is just a quagmire of price movement up, down and all over the place. So a lot of technical traders try and stay away from that. Personally, I don't. I actually enter positions before the market opens if the pattern is there and is good enough. So you've got J3 charts there, you've got 5-second bars. I've added a lot of indicators, well, most of the indicators that you see in my application. I started off with just VWAP, simple moving averages and exponential moving averages. Pivots, I created my own formula for pivots. So you should go and have a look how I do that because it's pretty interesting. All the other indicators like Bollinger Bands, CCIs, average true ranges, MACDs, those were all requests that came in from other traders who wanted to see this indicator in the application. And the framework I provided to add an indicator is pretty simple. You just need to inherit from an indicator class. I have a generic data model to allow you to add the attributes for indicators. So, whatever indicator you can think of is going to have parameters, and those parameters you can generically deploy into the database. So you define what the attribute's called, what its type is, whether it's an integer or a string, and you define what the default value for it's going to be, and that's stored generically in the database. So you don't have to change the database at all when you add an indicator to add the parameters for that indicator. I've added back testing, and the way my back testing works is if you're, say, a 5-minute trader, the lowest time frame it downloads is 1-minute bars. So it will replay 1-minute bars and build the bar in the time frame that you're trading. I believe interactive brokers can actually go down to 30-second bars. I haven't tried it yet, so you could do it at a lower level, but generally for any time frame that the strategy is assigned, if it's assigned anything above 1-minute bars, it will be back testing by building that time frame from 1-minute bars. And it uses its best guess at filling within 1-minute bars. If you had 2 orders that could be filled within that 1-minute price range, and the bar is a green bar, it will assume it goes from open to the bottom of the tail, comes back up to the top of the tail to the high, and then comes back down to the close. So it makes that assumption on filling. So if you think about it, your order was in the bottom tail and the top tail. When it's a green bar, it's going to fill the bottom one first and then the top one. That's the assumption it makes. You can manually create orders and transmit them in Trader Workstations. So if you've got a strategy running and you suddenly want to cancel that strategy or close the position in that strategy, there's manual features in the application that allow you to create your own orders and transmit them, and there's even a button there that just says close the position, and it will go and cancel any orders that are already sitting out there waiting to be filled, and then just send over a market order to close the position. Whoops. Where do we get to portfolio? The portfolio tab basically gives you a report of all the trades that have been traded, and you can actually see contracts that have no trades against them. It reports simple Sharpe ratio and batting average, and it sums it up by month, by year, and gives you the detail, obviously, for each position. Support for strategies written in Java. As I say, I did look at rules engines out there, and there's a lot of rules engines out there, and I've used them myself in other business situations. But when you get down to the detail level that most people want to write their strategies, and the reason they're using Trade Manager is they want to write a strategy that you just can't do with simple for each rules, which is why I've stuck with Java, because I have not yet found a rules engine that can do what I want to do in the strategies that I write. Separate strategies for end-to-end management. So I have allowed you the ability in the database, look at the database, there's a one-to-many relationship between strategies. So a strategy can have a strategy manager. And I just did that to allow you, a lot of people have a strategy to manage their positions that's common across all the positions they get into, but a lot of people have totally different ways of getting into a position. So you can write, 4 or 5 strategies to get you into the position and have them all use the same strategy to manage that position. Because a lot of the risk management for most people should be this common across all positions. Otherwise, it's very difficult to manage your statistics and become a successful trader. Strategy is compiled at runtime, and what I mean by that is the Java files are held out there in a directory, and when the app wants to run them, it compares the class that's loaded in memory, and if that class loaded in memory is different to the class that's in the file system, it will reload the class. So you can actually, through your favorite Java editor, be manually editing the strategy, and if Trade Manager's running, it will see the change and reload the class and rerun it. Obviously, it won't do that if the strategy is already running, but it will do it before it runs. And I don't recommend you ever do that, because any strategy you write should be highly tested before you ever deploy it into a real live environment. But it can be done. As I say, strategies are fired every 5 seconds as a 5-second bar comes in, or every time the last price falls outside of the current forming bar that your strategy is using, because you're subscribed to two data feeds. One's a 5-second bar and one is the actual live data feed. What else have we got here? Strategies. I version the strategies. So you'll see if you look at the strategy tab in the application, you can store multiple versions of the Java file in the database. So the latest version is in the file system, but any previous versions are stored in the database. So it gives you a sort of way that you can go back and load up an older version and deploy that to the file system. That way you can keep an eye on all the versions of the strategies to go with your statistics. You can import symbols into CSV, and what this uses in interactive brokers, if you're on your trading screen, you can export all your symbols and it exports them in a CSV format. Those then can be re-imported back into the trade manager. It's just an easy way for me in the morning to load all the contracts I want to trade into the trade manager, because I'm trading stocks. I don't have a standard list every day. It's going to be a different set of stocks. So I need this feature. It saves me having to type them all in. So if you're a currency trader, it's really easy. You just create a file with your 3 or 4 pairs of currencies you like trading, just import that each day, and you're all set up and ready to go. Configurable trade parameters. What I'm talking about here, I'll show you this in the database. I created a table that basically it's specifically for stocks, but it has stock ranges, you know, from $0 to $5 stocks, $5 to $30 stocks, and you can put in different attributes, amounts for rounding up, things like number of shares. So if you do risk-based trading like I do, where I never want to lose more than $400 on any specific position I get into, when I enter that position, I size the position based on the risk of $400, which gives me a quantity to buy, and then that quantity is obviously not going to be a whole number. So you can tell it, you know, if it's a $50 stock, I roll up 100 shares or roll down 100 shares, and I have all the algorithms to do that in the application. So that's just a dummy table that's in the database, but the application gives you an interface to go and change all those values. Time zone support. The reason I had to do this is the VM needs to run in the time zone of the market you're trading. So in my case, it's East Coast time. But when orders come through that have been executed, because my client's running on a PC that's in Pacific time, they actually come through with Pacific time zone timestamps. And obviously I want those converted back to East Coast time. So when you start the VM up, you start it up in your market time zone. But when you configure the application in the configuration.properties, you tell it what your local time frame is that your PC is actually running in, and then it will translate the orders back to your correct market time zone. And I need that because I display all the orders once they're executed on the charts. So if you watch those charts when your strategy is running and an order gets executed, in the bottom panel you're going to see the actual order pop up, and you'll see it plotted on the chart too. Account balances. I have a couple of guys who actually run their own little hedge funds. So when I started this, it just used to have one account, and that was whatever the account was that you were connected to when you go into Trader Workstation. But for these financial advisors, they have what's known as a financial advisor account, which is like the parent account, and they can have 15 accounts underneath that. And what interactive brokers do when you connect to the Trader Workstation, it actually downloads the account structure. And I have to store that in my database in order for you to be able to spread positions across multiple accounts. And it has all the features that interactive brokers has that allows you to do that. So you can, do it by, if I open 1,000 shares in a position, I can spread that across 15 accounts by giving them all different percentages that must add up to 100, or you can do it by, share specific numbers of shares, etc. They have a few ways of doing that, and you need to look at the interactive brokers documentation on how to do that. But I have all that feature set in the application, and it sets it all up for you. Support for Linux and Windows. I tested on Windows, but I also, in my office here, I have an Ubuntu box. So every time I deploy it, I take it over and and deploy it on Ubuntu, which is Linux running an old PC I have here, and I check that everything runs and the shell scripts and stuff will work. So that's the features. Now I think I'm falling behind. Let me just check, where are we? 25, yeah, I'm a bit slow. I'm going to speed up a bit. This slide I'm not going to spend any time on, but if you want to have a look, this is one of the simple first strategies I implemented. So if you read through it, it will give you an idea of the sort of things I tend to do in strategies. I won't pause on that. Okay, a bit more interesting here. Here's a quick high-level architectural view of the application. Up the top here, you've got the tabs. So when I show you the application, you'll see there's 5 tabs there. Each tab has its own controller, but underneath those controllers basically control how data is presented in the view part of the application. All of those controllers talk to a main controller that has no UI features, but it's a way for me to manage functionality that crosses tabs. So for instance, if you're on the portfolio tab, you can select a stock on the portfolio tab, double click it, and it will automatically take you over to the contract tab, which has the chart on it and all the orders, and it will load that contract up and show you the chart for that particular contract and the trades that you did for that. And it's useful when you're doing analysis, when you're going through your portfolio tab and you're looking at, why this stock lost, and you've got 100 different positions you had traded over a 3 months period. You can just quickly click on it and it will take you through to the details of that position and what the chart looked like. So there is some inter-tab communication that takes place, and that's why we have this main controller. Also, having the main UI controller is the way that I interface from the UI layer to all the different components in the application. So this main controller talks on the left-hand side here. We've got the interfaces to brokers. So at the moment, the only two I have 3 really. One that's to Interactive Brokers Trader Workstation, one that's to Yahoo, and that one only allows you to download data, obviously, because they can't execute trades. And the other one is I've developed the backtest interface. And the backtest interface is a separate component which basically mimics what Interactive Brokers is doing on their server. So I've basically implemented how they execute orders and stuff. I've done it here, which gives you the backtesting interface. And the backtesting interface also interfaces into Yahoo if you need to get data. So if the data is not there in the database, you haven't already previously downloaded it, it will try and get it from Yahoo. But what most people do is, if they want to backtest something, they connect to their Interactive Brokers, just download the data, then they run the backtest interface against the data they've downloaded. Yahoo data, by the way, is ridiculously inaccurate. It's okay for after about the first 15 minutes, okay, but the data for the first 5-minute bar is always terrible, and sometimes a couple of bars after that in the first 15 minutes tends to be a bit dubious. The UI controller talks to the Trade Manager service, and what the Trade Manager service is really a level above my database interactive. I use Hibernate, which is a Java framework for doing JPA. JPA basically uses ANSI SQL, and by using standard SQL to interact with the database, Hibernate can talk to any relational databases. So it supports things like Progress, Oracle, MySQL, Sybase, SQL Server, all of those databases. And if you write it using JPA, then you can simply just switch databases by changing the persistent XML file to talk to the different database, and it will talk without having to do any code changes. So that's why I used Hibernate. It's very commonly used as the framework, the go-to frame to work for database interaction relationally in Java. So the manager level above here, the transaction manager service, this handles the connections. So handles, sorry, what they call it, the connection pool to the database. So all transaction levels, I've lost the word. There's the session, that's it.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking of is this, it manages the sessions. So when you want to talk to the database, you create a session, you get a connection to the database, and in my application, those are done at the thread level. Bearing in mind at any particular time in the application, there can be up to 30 or 40 threads running. It's very important that I don't stamp on transactions that are happening across multiple threads, because that does happen in this application. You have a lot of thread management and session management that must happen across multiple threads. So you'll see a lot of tables in database are actually versioned to allow that to happen. And there's also binding from the transaction manager level all the way up through the UI. So there are a couple of fields you'll see in the UI that do update as transactions come in from the broker. So if an order executes, for instance, that would close the position and so close the strategy, you will actually see on the trading day tab, the strategy will turn yellow to green, even though this is a completely separate thread. So some of the objects at this level are bound all the way through and do listen for other actions that are happening within the database from other transactions. The strategy service is where we run our strategies. All the strategies use what's known as a thread worker. You can think of that as a task that's spawned off as a separate thread and sits there running in the background while the strategy is running. As I say, this is not implemented, but this is where you would hook in an inference engine. I looked at things like draws and business objects and a few other of them, and basically didn't come up with anything that was better than writing it all in Java. Okay, that's it for the high-level architecture. What I'm going to do now is quickly bring up the application and do a quick walkthrough. I won't spend much time on this simply because there's videos out there on the website, my website, that basically give you a walkthrough of the application. There's also, if you go out there under the downloads, you'll see there's a sample database. You can load that into MySQL, and that will give you all the data I'm going to show you here. This is the sample database. I'm going to connect it.
Simon, sorry, Simon, we had a question about the database from Shalom. Just a quick one, if you want to take it, is how easy is it to modify the backtest interface to connect to another data source, and what class would you need to look at?
When you're talking, yeah, you're really talking a new interface to a different broker. That's the interface. It's not that difficult. If you look under, I'll show you in a minute when I go through the broker API, but I've basically implemented a broker interface which has all the methods that are required in order to download data from another data source. But it is fairly simple. It really depends on how that data source is. You know, Yahoo uses HTTP to go and get their data, whereas Interactive Broker, you're connected through their message broker, and I believe it has JMS queues running in the background on the client side is the way they implement it. So it does depend on your data source, but yeah, I would guess it's pretty simple to do another one. I've done two, as I say, Yahoo and Interactive Brokers. But as far as the application, that's all you need to implement. Once you've implemented that, then the app takes care of everything else. As for changing the actual database itself, I've never tried it. I did download Progress and had a look at it, and the DDL I use in the DDL file, if you go through it, it's pretty simple. Most relational databases contain the same feature set. So I wouldn't anticipate it being a huge problem if you wanted to switch from MySQL to Progress to anything else. Okay, quickly, the 5 tabs. Let me increase the size of this. You've got 5 tabs. Trading day tab this basically shows you, this is where I load in what I'm going to trade each day. So when you add a new symbol here, it'll give you the trading day up here. And these fields here, anything that has a asterisk by it is, by the way, is mandatory. If you hold the mouse over the header, you'll see a description of the field. And if that field can have a default value, it'll be in the config properties, and it will tell you what that bold you see there is what value in the config properties it needs. You set your trades, whether you want to trade it. This tick box here tells you, do I want to run a strategy or not run a strategy? So you can run some contracts where you're just pulling data in, so you just subscribe to the data, but the strategy itself is not actually running. And then if you want to, you can start the strategy at a later point in time. If you select one of these, you have individual control over each contract. Here's the strategy, and this strategy actually has a strategy manager. If there was no strategy manager, there would be nothing in this field. These tiers and side is my bias for the position. As I've told you, I trade stocks, and I set them up before the day starts, and I have a bias in which direction I'm going to go. So this is really just a notation field that I may use in the strategy. You can leave it as blank and not fill it out at all. The tier I don't even use in my strategies, but it's just a way for me to tell if this is a good one or a bad one. So I use it for documentation, but I don't actually use it in the strategy. So you don't need to put any value in there. Strategy, portfolio, this is my actual account. And you can see when I logged on, I logged in and I actually have Trader Workstation running. You can't see it 'cause it's on I'm running 4 screens here, and you can only see one of them, but running on one of my other screens. And when it connects, it automatically downloads your current available margin, the current balance on that account, the name of the account, any realized profit, unrealized profit. And this bar here will update every time the account changes. So if an order went off in Trader Workstation, whether it be you executing it from the trade manager, or if you manually executed it from within Trader Workstation, the account balances here will all change. They're all fed through because as you log in, you actually are subscribing to account updates. Other fields here are the 5-minute bars. This is telling this strategy wants to trade 5-minute bars. Chart days, this is going to pull in 2 days worth of data. So for today's trading, if I started subscribe to data before the market opened, what this would do would be pull in all the historical data for the previous day, and then it will trade through today. And you can change that to be 2 days. It has various values: 2 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, etc. Obviously, you need historical data because otherwise your indicators, most indicators are based on historical values. In fact, they're all based on historical prices. So if you're using, a 20 MA or a 200 MA, for instance, on 5-minute bars, you need at least 200 historical bars to have an accurate 200 moving average. So you need to set that to the historical amount of data so you get enough data for your indicators to work. Risk amount, this for me, because I do risk-based trading, as I say, each position I don't want to lose more than a certain amount on that position. And my bias is when I enter a position, I don't take a position, for instance, that doesn't have the potential to make 3 times what I can lose. So if I have a risk per position of $400, I would never want to lose more than 400 on a position, but I'm targeting to make 3 times that on the position. So when I look at the chart, I want to see there be a void in the direction I'm trading of at least three times that. Now, to let you know, that is a very simplistic way of thinking about things, and I don't trade actually like that. The theory behind how I trade is that, but the way you enter positions and exit positions is you build a position. So you'll start off, with maybe a quarter of the intended position and manage your way into the position, and then you manage your way out of the position depending on support, resistance, time of days, what the market's doing. There's a whole other I could go on for 2 days on how I manage positions, enter them and exit them, and it's very complicated. But this is for simple trading. It gives you a value that you can run in your strategy to try and protect yourself so you don't end up with a position that blows your account away. And you can also use the margin as well in your strategy. All these values here on the account that are updating because we've subscribed to them are available within the strategy to use those values. The rest of this stuff is just, the status here is quite interesting. This will, when you're running the strategy, this will be blank, and then it will go open a position when a position's opened, and then it will go close a position when a position's closed. These will turn from yellow, these will be green when they're running, and then they turn yellow when they're finished. So these are the 3 fields I said are bound all the way through to the database, because this thread that the UI is working on isn't the thread that's running the strategies, and it isn't the thread that's talking to the broker. Those are 2 other separate threads, and they can be updating the database, but the UI needs to know about when changes in the data happen, so it can update things like the status here and the % changes from open to close, and of course the strategies themselves. The other values you see across here are just standard values that you must have for the contract. So in Interactive Broker, the actual value behind stock is STK, exchange smart is, I think it's actually smart, but you can put in any of the exchanges. I think I've already, in this drop down, there's probably, how many do I have? Oh, I can't change that because this has an executed order on it. Some of these fields, by the way, once the strategy's run, you can't change them then. So you can't go and change things like dollars, you can. That one you shouldn't be able to. But you shouldn't be able to change any, that's a bug, any fields once a strategy has completed. And the fact that these have values in this status, you know this strategy is completed. Okay, the contract tab, this is really just a dashboard tab. It does have, it shows you charts, and you can zoom in on the charts and zoom out on the charts. You can right click and print the charts, zoom in, zoom out. You can do a whole bunch of things, but it's really just for you to look at. It shows these are the pivots, by the way, and if you look at how I created these pivots indicators, it's quite interesting maths behind that. But it shows you all your indicators that you're trading. These live update, by the way, when the strategy's running. You'll also see when orders get executed and filled. You'll see them on the, you can see one here actually, that red there actually says the filled amount here, and there's an arrow pointing to it. Actually, let me zoom in, you should be able to see it. There you go. You can see here where it closed a position and here where it opened a position. So this one's trying to go short, and it was buying under the 5-minute low. So it purchased here, then the stock turned around against it, and it closed the position for a loss up here. So that's just it. Down the bottom here, you can actually add orders and manually execute them if you want to override what the strategy is doing. There's a button here that allows you to cancel all orders and close position if you want to kill the strategy, and that will actually close the strategy that's running down. So as I say, that's just really a dashboard tab. They show up over here. Red means it's a short position, and if it's green, it will be a long position. These are great plays, by the way. These ones that run up, get extended, and then they, after the reversal time, they just fall all day. I love these. Anyway, that's nothing to do with the application, but it's just if you want to make money, those work.
It's
all the time.
I think
this one did it as well. Fell all day. Extended stops to new high on earnings. Winners all the time. Portfolio. As I say, it's just a simple report. Nothing complicated behind here. From a technical perspective, as you notice, this report, let me bring you up the whole of 2014, so I think I have all that data as well. There you go. This played 1,585 positions. This is backtest data that you're seeing here, the results from backtest data. You can see here the total for all of these months summed up. This is the batting average, percent winners, losers, so it's around 40-45%. The Sharpe ratio represents how much you won to how much you lost. So if you have one trade that, you know, lost $200 and then another trade that wins $200, you're running at a ratio of 2 to 1. So that's what that ratio is. So having a ratio greater than 1 and a batting average of 50% means you're making money. So these Sharpe ratios are great, but the batting averages are okay on there. It gives you all the totals. You can look at all those. You can sort all these columns just by clicking them. I won't do it. You can export this as a CSV file, and then you can import it into Excel if you want to do more manipulation on it. This checkbox will show you trades that didn't trade, so the strategy ran, but the criteria to open a position wasn't met, so the contract wasn't traded. And you can see the reasons, the strategy in this case. These statuses, you can make up your own statuses. I have a whole bunch of them, but you can design your own statuses. So your strategy, you know, if rules aren't met in a strategy and the position never opens, you can give that strategy a status. And I have things like timeout, percent range. Percent range just means that because this trades the first 5-minute bar, it just means the first 5-minute bar was too damn big for me to trade. So the chances of it moving 3 times the first 5-minute bar were so large, I'm not even going to bother about trading it, so it just kills the strategy. Timeout means it couldn't enter the position. I believe in this strategy, it has to enter the position, open a position before 10 o'clock in the morning. If it doesn't, it times it out, because you're at reversal time by then, so it usually means the stock's just gone sideways for half an hour, so who cares what it does? It's not going to move enough for me to make money. That's what that does. Of course, you can change the date ranges, you can change the account if you're a financial advisor and have multiple accounts you manage. This guy just changes the statistics a little. So for win-loss, you can imagine that I count a lot. If I'm trading 200 risk, I count a loss, anything that's negative. But if I want to say only count a loss that's more than $100, if I put $100 in here and run the report now, it won't count losses that are less than $100 or wins that are greater than $100. So it changes the statistics slightly, you can see here. So a lot of the bad statistics that brought us under 50% were lots of little small losses that were less than $100. So you can use this to get rid of, you know, if you're trading like I do a 400 risk, then I don't care the trades that are $25 loss or $50 wins. To me, they're all break even. They're insignificant when it comes to statistical analysis. Okay, configuration tab. Here we start getting into how you configure a strategy. So these are the names of the strategies here. And down the bottom here, for each of the strategies, you add the indicators that you may want to use in that strategy. So you can see here, in this 5-minute bar gap strategy, it doesn't actually use any of these indicators. I just put them in as an example so you can see them on the charts. It makes the charts look all pretty. It actually just uses 5-minute bars, and I think it uses VWAP and volume. No, it doesn't use volume. It uses VWAP. It uses, no, it doesn't use count. It just uses VWAP, basically that 5-minute bar. But you can add indicators. Obviously, the more indicators you use, the more performance issues you're likely to have. I run on a i7 CPU, and I don't really have any performance problems. When I'm running my application during the day, the machine I'm on now is my actual trading platform, and I run eSignal interactive brokers. I usually have a couple of spreadsheets up and running. I've got the database running on this machine. I actually run the trade manager on a separate machine I have over to my right, which has a 24-inch monitor, and that communicates with this computer to connect to the client interactive brokers, and it communicates with this PC to use the databases over here. And I can tell you, I never see my 8 CPUs get anywhere near above 25% usage with all that going on this PC. And this machine is actually, I think it's 3 years old now, but it's a i7 8 CPU processor. So that's just to let you know. The other things you can configure here are portfolios. So here it's just got one portfolio, but if you were a financial advisor, you would have one portfolio, which is your parent account. You'd have all your other accounts down here of your clients would show up, and you can put, you know, what the currencies are, buying power, etc., realized profit. It shows you all the statistics for those accounts, and that automatically downloads. And there's different types of accounts. This is individual, but you've got IRA, traditional Roth, trust account, joint accounts, and institution accounts. What else do we have? Code type. Remember I said indicators? All indicators tend to have parameters, and this is where you manually can add the parameters for your different types of indicators. So you don't have to change the database. It's all done through here, and I have 3 generic tables that hold the values. You can put your default values in here, the name of the parameter, what it represents, its data type. And you can also use a data type editor. So what this does is it pulls in an editor. So say you had a data type that could have 5 different values in it that were codes, you would create that class and assign the class type here. And then when that value shows up in the pop-up over show strategies on here, if I select one of these, say VWAP, this is where I'll set the parameters. Oh, VWAP doesn't have any parameters. Let's do pivot because that has some. These are the attributes for that indicator. And you can see here I'm using drop downs of yes and no's for those parameters. So you can configure those drop downs without actually having to write any Java code whatsoever for your parameters, for your indicators. It's all generically implemented and uses this code type, code attribute, code value set of tables to do that. The last table was this limit table I talked about, where we have price ranges. This is specific for stocks. Obviously, it's not really applicable to futures or indices or currency pairs. But for stocks, you know, when you're dealing with Apple or Google now, $600, what you would call a large bar or a large price range movement and how many shares you want to round to is going to be completely different to when you're looking at a $2 stock. You're a $2 stock when you buy a 2,000 share. If you did a calculation for the risk of the position, it said buy 1,857 shares, you're probably going to round that up to 1,900 shares or 2,000. If you're talking Google, you're not going to be rounding up and down 100 shares. You're more likely rounding up and down 10 shares. So this table allows you to do that. This is quite an interesting column actually, round price. Everyone knows who's traded for any length of times that stocks fear 0.5 and whole numbers. Whenever a stock gets near a whole number, it's usually a really good idea to sell it, to start putting sell orders out there at 0.92, 0.94, 0.97, 0.99, and possibly some at over the whole number at 0.5 or 6 for when it actually does break through the whole number. So this round price allows you to specify a range either side of a whole or half number that you want to round over or under. So if you're trying to get into a position and you're looking at the chart and the chart's telling you, oh, you should get in around 0.97, you might never want to do that because 9 times out of 10 it's going to fail at the whole number and drop back down. So you'd get in at 0.97 and immediately get killed on a stop out or something. So what this rounding says is, when I've got it set at 0.05, it says if you're 5 cents above or below a half number or a whole number, round over that whole number or over that half number. So if the chart's telling me or the strategy's telling me to buy at 0.97, sorry, it will say, that's within 0.95 to the whole number, so I'll round it up and buy at 1 cent or 2 cents over the whole number. It's just a technique I use in my particular trading to not get caught out by buying. near whole numbers and half numbers, I want to go overrun them. Similarly, when you want to sell before the whole number, or at least take some of your position. So that's that configuration table. So this tab's all about configuration. The last one's strategy. And this tab's really more of an informational tab. I don't expect anyone in the world ever to go in here and start editing the Java code of their strategy and running the compile button to see if it compiles. It's purely here for viewing and managing the strategy. So you can see all of these only have version 1. But if I made an alteration here to the strategy, compiled it to make sure it still compiles, and then save it, you'll get a pop-up, and the pop-up will ask you, do you want to version it? And if you say yes, what it will do is it will create a second version of this, so you'll have 2 of them here, version 1 and version 2, and it will write the version 2 out into the file system, because the one that's used is always the latest version, which is stored in the strategy directory in the file system. But it will also store both versions as a blob in the database. So you can pull it up out of the database and replace the file system with the version 1 if the version 2 is not what you want. So you can keep multiple versions of your strategy. Down here you've got a comments field, which allows you to write notes about what the strategy is. So this is really the high-level spec I use it for of the strategy. It's just a quick way so people can see what the strategy does. If I click, what am I doing there? I'm just trying to wonder, here we go. I was wondering why nothing was shown down there. What you see down here is all the methods that are implemented for a strategy. So for this particular strategy, when you implement a strategy, you inherit from an abstract class. And the reason you inherit from this abstract class is the abstract class handles all the threading for you, all the communication with the broker, all the communication for the data flow of data. It does all of that, and what it does is every time prices change, it fires run strategy. So in your strategy, really the only method you need to implement, there's 2 actually, but this one's the main one, is run strategy. And run strategy will fire every time there's a price change or every 5 seconds. The Boolean value here tells you if you've got a new candle that started. So if my strategy is a 5-minute strategy, that Boolean will be true every 5 minutes, even though this strategy fires every 5 seconds or every time the last price has fallen outside of the high-low of the current forming bar. In the subclass, you can see all the methods here that you can use in your run strategy. So most of these methods are helper methods to help you create orders, close positions, get an individual account so you can look at the current outstanding margin, what your current balance is, what your current profit is for the day, etc., etc. You can update orders that you've already posted out there and are sitting waiting to execute. There's a whole bunch of things going on here, but cancel orders. Is risk violated? If you have a risk strategy out there and you want to check if you've violated it, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But I've basically given you a whole bunch of helper methods. So when it comes to writing Java code, you don't need to be an expert. Just copy one of my strategies and start changing it to do what you want. And call methods in the base class that you've inherited from to actually do the work. If there's methods there that you guys you think would be useful to be added for the style of trading you do, just let me know what the definition of those methods is and I'll add them in so everyone can use them. It will save everyone having to write the same method 100 times. There's one other method that this strategy doesn't implement, and it's called, I'll show you it's in, I'll show you it's actually when I go through the code, but it's a method whenever an order is executed. So not only will the strategy fire when data changes in terms of price, but also if an order has been executed, you will get a separate method in the strategy fired and then you can see which order, and it will pass in the order that's been executed. So then you may have to do something in your strategy. You may have some rules based on this. You know, you have 3 orders to get in a strategy, and if one of them executes to get you in a position, you may want to kill off the other 2 orders that you had out there that would have got you in the same position for different rules that you've written. Okay, that's it for the application itself. I'm going a bit, not very good timekeeping there. That's the hour done. I'll do a quick, I can do a quick 5 minutes on the Java code itself in Eclipse, or should I do a quick 5 minutes on the actual database?
Why don't we do a survey on that? If you guys want to type up, you want to see the database or Java code, or do you want to see both?
The database will literally take me 3-4 minutes, and then I can do quick Java code.
Yeah, why don't we do that? I don't have a problem with it.
Because I've got there we go. Here's what I did was just take the data structure out of MySQL and save it as a PDF file. So I'll quickly walk you through this. It all is based around, refresh is terrible on this, but it's all based around trade strategy. Trade strategy is what you see on the first tab when you go in. And a trade strategy is identified by a contract, by the portfolio, by the trading day that you want to trade, and one other thing, the strategy itself. Okay, so when you set up something that you want to trade, you tell it, I want to trade this contract using this strategy on this trading day, and I'm assigning it to this portfolio, which is either the parent account that may have many child account, or for 90% of out there we just have one account, so it's just one account, and the account up here is the same account as the account over here is the same account as the portfolio. They're one and the same. This one-to-many structure just exists because we have financial advisors who manage other people's accounts. Trade strategy over here, you can see an involuted relationship. So trade strategy can have many other trade strategies. So you can link trade strategies together, and that relationship is managers. So you can have a manager trade strategy at the top of the tree that is used by lots of other trade strategies underneath. And as I say, that's because most people have a common set of rules for managing a position once they're in it. They basically try not to lose money. So they have all these rules to manage it, and they tend to be common across all their positions. Trade strategies have rules, and this is the table that holds your actual strategy. And the rule, when I say rule, it's that Java class that is your strategy, and it's held as a blob with a creation time and version. Trade strategies use indicators. So remember when we were on the configuration panel and I clicked on a strategy and it showed you all the list of indicators. This is the indicators on all their relationships. Up here, very simply, we've got the trading day, candles, and contract. So contracts have candles by trading day. And of course, the candles can be on different time frames, from 5 seconds to days to you name it. But the largest time frame we store is a day. So if you have a candle that goes across multiple days, it will have multiple days here, and you have to break it down. The largest candle, I can deal with is a daily candle. So you can't have weekly candles. I don't do that. I don't allow it. My data structure doesn't allow it. Coming down here, everything hangs really off a trade strategy. Trade strategies create trade orders. Trade orders have trade order fills, so these are the executions. This is the actual order itself, and it has a lot of attributes. These are your executions. To the left here we have very important table, trade positions. And once a contract obviously can have many positions. At any particular point in time, any one position can be open. If you've got an open position and you execute a trade that adds to that position or takes away from that position is still considered open. Once that position gets down to 0 in terms of quantity, i.e. non-left, the trade position is closed. Then if you open up another order against that contract, you'll get a new trade position, and this relationship here, this one-to-one, is a way for you to get from the contract to the open trade position. So this relationship represents open position, whereas these relationships, you could have traded that contract 20 times over several days, and this will show you all the positions and the buy-sell quantities, profit, loss, etc. for those positions. But there's only ever one position that's actually open. Over to the right here, these three tables, remember I said we have generic parameters for indicators. This is how I'll store those generic parameters. I won't go into that, but you can look at the values if you want. And back up here, we're back to indicator. And that's a database. One table on its own here is the entry limit table, which I showed you on the configuration table, where we had stock prices from $0 to $5, $5 to 10. All those values are held in here. Done, database. Okay, now let's go on to Java code. I'll quickly run through the packages. I won't go into too much detail, but I'll just give you an overview of the package structure. Actually, let's first just look at the... when you deploy it, in the directory, you'll get these directories under your trade manager. So ANT has all the stuff related to building the application. Bin, this won't be there till you build the application, but it's got all the class files once they've been built. Configuration, this just contains the main file here that you're interested in is the config properties. You should go through that at some point and look at all the parameters I have in there, because these are all default configurations for any of the fields that you can enter into the application. It also has logging down here, so you can change the log level. At the moment it's all set to errors. The only one that's not errors is info. I think I've got set on strategies, so when you run a strategy class, it will print out any information logging, but everything else is error. But this is where you would change it if you want to get your logging down to info, warning, error, debug, trace, etc. You just change these values here and here. But the rest of these are all default values. Things like connection information, your risk amounts, so this is how you connect to Trader Workstation. But it's all in there. You can look through that. That's what's in the configuration file. The only, is it here? Not there. I'm just looking for the persistence. Yeah. This is the guy that connects to your database in Java, and it has the connection information and user ID in here. This is actually used by Hibernate, so it has all the what they call them, plain old Java objects listed here. But this is the actual database connection information. So if you were switching from MySQL to another database, this is where you would tell it the driver, the pool you want to use, etc. That's all you need to know about in configuration. Core has all the core Java classes. I actually used a framework I'd built myself for building simple UIs, and this has all the core stuff in it. You should never need to go in there and change any of that. And most of this will disappear when I rewrite this in Java FXML. Database, in the database, the only interesting files here are the DDL, data definition language. So this actually defines the database itself. So it defines all the tables. So obviously you would change this if you were using a different database than MySQL. This has all the default data that gets loaded into the tables. So this is all the basic data that you need. So you can change this if you want to make the basic data different to the data I have. So go through and take a look at that if you want. I've written a couple of simple queries to help you navigate around the database and look at positions if you need to ever use that, if you're down at that level. Sometimes there's upgrade scripts here. So if I have to change the database between versions of the application, sometimes I'll put in the release notes you need to run an ANT upgrade target. You'll run the update DB in the build.bat, and that will automatically up your database from the previous version to the latest version. That doesn't happen very often. The rest of the stuff in here is pretty uninteresting. It's just these delete files are just ways of clearing data, transactional data out of the database. So if you want to clean all your orders out of the database, you can run this. If you want to clean all the accounts out of the database, you can run this. If you want to get rid of all your trade strategies and your trade orders and your account data, you can just run this. I've created a few, maintenance type scripts. Dist, you don't need to know about that. That gets created when you build the application and creates the actual jar file. Docs is really just some documentation. As I go along, I collect it. If you want a trading log example, for instance, I have one in here. This is a presentation that I showed you earlier. These are just pictures of the tabs that I've taken over the years. You can actually see, I think I even have, eSignal layout. This is my layout for eSignal. I use eSignal for charts, by the way, when I'm trading. Not eSignal, guys. I've even got, do I have IB? Yeah, that's it. Nothing else interesting. There's some documentation on the project, the spec. This document tells you about the project and why I built it and the feature set and stuff. Right, that's it for the docs. What else do we have? Lib. These are all the third-party libraries. Looks like a huge list, but 90% of this is Hibernate, JFree charts, SQL drivers, TWS, and that's it really, and logging classes. Don't need to worry about anything in there. Strategies. Now, remember I said when you write a strategy, it's deployed to the file system. And these are the actual strategies, the Java files that get compiled to classes and then run in the application. So this is the latest version of the strategy versus the older versions, and this version are also stored in the database. And the text files are the documentation for the strategy. So when I showed you the strategy tab and you saw the panel that had Java code in it and the panel below had the descriptions, these are those description files here. They're read in from this directory when you load the latest version of the strategy into your application. Now, the last one, trade. This contains two folders: source code for the application, so all the source code's under there, and under the test is all the unit test cases that I run to test the application before I deploy it. So there's the file system, right? So you can see all those directories in here. Within here, if we go under trades, as I said, this is the source code, trade source. This is all the source code for the actual application. And the packages are broken down into distinct areas. So it's pretty easy to see how I've built this application from my naming convention. Trade broker has the broker APIs, and in here you'll see, remember I said I've implemented Trader Workstation. So this is the implementation for the Trade Workstations API. So this is what you would replace if you were doing it to another broker, such as TradeStation, or someone had a question on how easy would it be to get data from another broker. This would be the class that you would add a new class in here for the broker. In here, there's an abstract broker model which implements base functionality for firing events to other threads that happen in the application. So you would inherit from this abstract model, and then you implement the broker model, which gives you all the methods that need to be implemented. Now, Trader Workstation implements all these methods. If you're using a different broker, I can guarantee that you will probably have some methods to add to this interface, and a lot of methods you would probably be taking away from this interface. So if someone does come up with another broker they want to implement, we would need to create a new interface. We'd still inherit from the abstract broker model, but we would implement a different probably model here, because this model contains everything from getting market data to executing orders, and you may have a lot more, a much more limited subset of functionality that their broker implements versus Trader Workstation. That's the broker. The client here is all the stuff in here is to do with my back test or with my back test basically. So it's how I've implemented the back test module that allows you to do back testing. So what I've got in here is effectively what the Trade Workstation's client does. I've replicated it inside the application to allow you to do back testing. Broker request. This you don't need to worry about. This package here was needed for the financial advisors, and it basically contains the code used to pull in multiple accounts, account structures where you have the parent account structure and multiple clients under that. So it's used by financial advisors who are managing other people's accounts. So don't even worry about that. Value types, don't worry about these. These are little classes that represent codes and decodes. So when you look on the screen, you see US dollars, but when you actually use that, it uses USD as a value. And obviously in a UI, USD and EUR are not that intuitive. So these classes here are just bunches of decodes, decodes. Very simple. So don't even need to touch those. If you ever need a new one, let me know and I'll add it in. The next three packages are all to do with the database. So when I showed you the database persistent layer, that's all held in these classes. This last one just has the two reports. These are the raw SQL I was telling you about. As you can see, for an SQL query, it's pretty big, but writing reports all as is. If you'd written these reports, by the way, using JPA, we would have been sitting around for 3 or 4 minutes waiting for it to bring the data in, compile it, group it, do the unions. SQL is so much faster when it comes to writing reports than using native Java or JPA. So don't worry about those two. In the DAO, these are all plain old Java objects, as we call them, and they're interfaces. So each of these, this represents a contract, so it has all the contract attributes in it. Contract home gives you the helper methods for finding a contract. I have, to simplify all of this, and the good thing about Hibernate is it allows you to write a method to persist any objects. So all my plain old Java objects inherit from a class called aspect. An aspect is just a generic table with the only attributes it has in it is ID and version. And I may have timestamp, but because I inherit all my plain old Java objects from a simple class, it allows me to, when I save them, just to pass a generic class to a generic home interface that will persist any object. So that's why you only see finds in here and you don't see persists or updates or deletes, because I can do that in a generic way. So you'll find every plain old Java object has a home, and the home does the work, and the object itself represents the table, is the actual class. When you see things like contract light, this contract has all the attributes. A contract light just has a few attributes that I'm interested in for managing a position, for instance. So it's a way when I go to the database that I don't have to pull all the contract attributes out when all I needed to know was, say, what the symbol was for that particular contract. I'm not interested in the rest of the stuff. It's a technique we use in persistent management to make it really, really fast. Now we go to strategy. Remember I said we have an aspect strategy. All strategies you write will be inherited off of this, and this gives you all these helper methods for you to implement in your strategy. So it saves you writing a whole bunch of Java code for creating an order, deleting an order, cancelling an order, blah, blah, blah. So all your strategies inherit off of this. The rest of the stuff here are just classes I need to allow other parts of the application to listen to strategies while they're running and throw exceptions and do all that sort of handling. Okay, data. Now we get to when you subscribe to Interactive Broker's Trader Workstation to get data for a contract, within Java, what you're seeing is you have a series, and a series is basically just an array that hold candles, and the candles hold data for high, low, open, close, and volume and VWAP. Those are the basic attributes held in the object that's in the array, and the array is called the candles series, which you see here. You also have, for each series has a data set. So a data set can hold many series. So say I'm subscribed to 3 different contracts. You can have a candle data set that holds 3 different contracts. And the reason it's done this way is to, when the charts are plotted and you want to plot charts above charts, you find the time access is always constant across the series. Whereas the objects that you're actually showing and the values and the y-axis is always going to be different depending on what it is you're looking at within that. But this is basically where we have candle series. We have, if I create any new indicators, they exist in here. So you never need to worry about this unless you're going to implement a new indicator. The indicators then are all sub-packages here. So average true range, for instance, and they all have these 3 classes. One of the item, this is like the plain old Java object for whatever that indicator is. This is his actual item that is used for plotting. And this is the interface to represent its data set. And they all implement a common set of methods that are called whenever an indicator is updated. So all these packages here are purely here just to split out indicators. Now we get to last least, the UI part of the application. Everything from here on down under UI is to do with UI. The UI package I'm in here is actually the main application. So this is the class you run when you want to run the application. So if I do run, this should fire up. It's a bit slow. There we go. That's got your main class in it there. Main controller, remember I said there's a controller for each tab and then a main controller. And this is the main controller. This main controller, when it fires up, actually creates all the tabs and their controllers. And those controllers, this controller then can communicate with the controllers for the tabs. So if you're looking for functionality that happens only within that tab, you'll find it in the controller for that tab. But if that controller then needs to talk to the back end of the application, it will go through the main controller. So the main controller can coordinate actions between tabs as well as listen to actions that are happening below the main controller in the database layer, the broker layer, or the strategy layer. So you've got those 3 layers below the main controller, and the main controller can listen to those because those are all running in their separate threads and are doing things, and they fire errors back to the main controller, and then it distributes them to the UI if it needs user interaction. So that's a very, very important class in this application. This is just menus. This property file here just holds properties that never change. So things like currency names, stock exchange names, order types, limit, stop limit, blah, blah, blah. They're all held here because they're never ever going to change. If you ever need the things adding to here, and occasionally I do add stuff to here, I get requests, someone from, the India market texted me and emailed me a few weeks back and wanted their market added into the list of markets I have here. I'll add them, and I have a special program that goes through and re-indexes this whole file. Then the rest, I'm not really going to go into much detail below here, but you can see from the names, they pretty much follow the tabs. So this is a configuration tab in here. So you can see it's panel. When I say panel, this is really a controller. This is a controller for the configuration tab. This is the controller for the contract tab. Controller here for the portfolio tab. Controller for the strategy tab. These are all the tables. So whenever you see a table, I use a base class table, and then I inherit from that base class table and configure it. So this is where, any table that's in the application, it has a table and everything on it's configurable. So like editors and renderers for the cells in the table are all configurers and use value types, etc. Of course, every table has to have a model below the table, and because we use a model view controller. So you'll see here we have the models. So these are the models for all the tables. So portfolio table model. The names pretty much describe exactly what they do. These are all the renderers. When I've had to write custom renderers for table cells, you'll see some in here. And some of these actually bind all the way through to the database. That's why these specific ones have been written. That's the trading day tab. And that pretty much goes it for the code base and the packages. It's pretty self-explanatory once you delve into it a bit. The complex areas tend to be in the multi-threaded stuff on back testing. It's not so bad for the application side when it's running live. That threading is fairly simple compared to what happens when you do backtest, when I have to implement what the client side would be doing that you're connected to. I think we're pretty much done, unless people have questions.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I'll call that, what you just showed to me is like a license to print money.
Really?
Yeah, honestly.
If you can write a strategy that will make money. To tell you, in the 2 or 3 years I've been writing and implementing strategies for other people and backtesting for them, would warn you that 50 or 60% of the people that have come to me and say, hey, I've got this strategy that always makes money. When we've written it, implemented it, and backtested it, I would say a good 80, 90% of them are lucky if they break even.
Yeah. Well, that's not surprising. But let's open it up for Q&A. If you just want to type them up if we need, we can unmute you. I'm sure you guys got questions. I got 1 or 2 questions as well, but let's get everybody else handled first.
If I don't get to the question now, or if you think of something after this presentation, please just email me.
Do you want?
Or I won't give my Skype out to everyone, otherwise I'm going to be harassed by Skype. But emails, generally, I answer everyone's email within a day. So, yeah. And usually in an email, I can give you a better technical explanation and examples of coding, if it's coding related, than I can if you're doing it any other way of communicating.
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty fast at responding. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. You got to remember, I only trade from 6 o'clock till 7:10 each day, so I do have a lot of free time.
You're living the dream, man.
I was actually contemplating on going back and doing some real work at some point.
No.
Well, I've gone through all the Coursera courses on algorithms, big data, Python, Ruby on Rails. One really interesting one I did was probabilistic graphical modeling, which is the facial recognition stuff. So I was looking how I could use that to recognize sophisticated patterns in charts, but haven't quite got that working yet. Anyway, questions?
Yeah, who's got questions? You guys got questions? Yeah, I know, that's bizarre. Everyone's either shy. Oh, here comes one from Ven. Is there a way to compare different strategies against... Yeah, go ahead.
On a chart. The only way I can think... What I've done is if I've got the app up, you can actually do that. What I do, and I've done it myself, what I do is I get myself, I implement a whole bunch of stocks I want to test. I create a bunch of test data, and I do that by creating a CSV file with all the stocks I would have traded on, and you can put the dates in you would have traded, etc. Load it in here like this. So let's go back a few days, so we get a few days worth here. So I didn't go back far enough because there's a weekend, of course. I haven't come to things on a Monday. Okay, so here's all last week's gappers. And at the moment, they're all trading this one strategy. Now, if you look up here, you've got these 2 fields, and they're both set to the same. But what you can do is switch, so you can create this data here, download the data from Interactive Brokers, that will give you your test data. Then disconnect, once you disconnect from Interactive Brokers, this is connected at the moment. Sorry, this isn't connected. So this is in back test mode. When I'm connected, let me connect. When I'm connected, you'll see you can't do back testing. The button here is grayed out. Let me make this big. I think you can see that. Is grayed out. When I disconnect, but the live run strategy live is available. When I disconnect, now I can back test. So if you connect, then run the yellow button, that will download all the data. It won't run the strategy, just download the data. Then you have all your back test data. Then you can run the back test, which will create you your results over here. You can save these results off, okay? Then you can come back here and do delete.
Yeah.
Delete all orders. And what this will do is clear out all the orders. Then you can come over here, and at the moment it's set to this strategy, and you can change strategy. So you can switch it over to this strategy, and if you press this button, what it will do is it will change all of these from this strategy to this strategy over here. So now you have all your data set up, you've deleted all your orders out from the first run of the test. Now you can rerun the test for this new strategy over here. You'll get a new set of results over here. You can save those off, and now you've got the two sets of results that will run for two different strategies, and you can compare them. And if you're like me, I'm a bit of a whiz with VB in Excel, and that was not by choice, by the way. I hate VB, but I wrote a bunch of macros in VB to allow me to import all my trades from Interactive Brokers. So at the end of the day, when I finish trading, what I do, because most of my getting into positions is done manually and trading through Interactive Brokers, I just download their log, and I have a macro that can import it into Excel and copy it into my trading log. And that got me really, really familiar on how to manipulate spreadsheets. So once you get two sets of spreadsheets with your two different sets of data in, which will have all your Sharpe ratios and batting average, then you can compare them and start looking through each individual trade and decide, you know, which strategy is better, etc. You can compare the results. And I have to do that. I actually, once every quarter, I look at the strategies that I use, and I run a whole year set of back test data, because most of the strategies I'm using are for managing positions. I run a whole year's worth of data through against my management positions, and my management position actually has about 52 rules in it that can be altered, and I alter those rules, those 52 rules, and create combinations of them and run the test data over and over again. And this takes me usually about a week to do the whole thing. But it because the market internals are changing all the time, and the way the market trades changes all the time. We're lucky. Anyone who's been trading the last 4 years, you've only seen a constant uptrend that's had little volatility. So I think there was 2 periods when volatility increased significantly. So you've only really seen an uptrend. But once you start seeing this market turn over and starting to go down, you're going to be in a whole different ball game, and strategies that used to work and the way you used to manage positions, you're suddenly going to find doesn't work as well as it did. And that's why I do this every quarter, is I go in and alter my 56 rules, and I have a whole spreadsheet with a whole bunch of parameters that I use, and I do this measurement to find out what is the best way what parameters to use to manage positions and get the most out of them. So that's how I do it, in a long ass way. Question answer.
Oh no, that's good. But, go ahead.
So that's how you would do it anyway. So you can create multiple strategies and run them against the same set of test data, then export the results from the portfolio and compare your battings and Sharpe ratios.
There you go. That's an awesome tip. Honestly, the power of MATLAB, you know.
And you should do that, because it's a pain in the arse to have one strategy and just keep altering that strategy. It's better to create 3 or 4 versions of the strategy with different names, and then run those 3 or 4 against the same set of test data and see what the results are. and then alter the parameters in different strategies to try and improve your results. And you should be doing that. I mean, any trader should be doing that with their trading log anyway. Everyone who trades like we do, they should be keeping a log. They should have strategies that they trade. They should have a trading plan, and they should cycle those three things. So they look at their log once a week or once a month, check the results. How well did I do against my plan? Did I stick to my plan? Did I stick to the strategies that I said I'm going to trade, etc., etc.? That's how you should be trading if you're going to make money doing this.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Some of the courses I've been learning. Shalom had a question. Cancel all and close all button is same as flatten all, as a question.
Yeah, it's basically going to close a position. So what it does is it looks at, it goes to the open position table, finds all the orders that are hanging out there that are either partially filled or open, and it just cancels all those orders. And then once those have been cancelled, it takes the open position and creates a market order to close what's the current open position quantity. And it sends that over as a market order. We'll close you out.
So you don't allow your system at all to do any overnight trading whatsoever, correct?
No. I'm an intraday trader, and to tell you the truth, the only long-term positions, now I don't do that, but I have other clients who do that, and the application can do it. I know that. I have a guy in Florida who trades the CCI indicator, and he trades that on a daily basis and an hourly basis. He uses daily candles going back 20 days, I think, and he uses hourly candles going back 2 weeks, and he does hold positions across days. But personally, I never do. I'm close every position out, as I say, on nearly every day by 7:10. But I would never. There have been days where it's been managed. That one of the rules I have is to close the position at 3:58. So the strategy itself, as soon as 3:58 ticks around, it goes out there and just closes the position.
Shalom has another question about zombie threads. And do you periodically check for these threads and do a cleanup?
Anyone who writes Java code and has zombie threads should be shot in the head, quite frankly. So I have run, with Java, there's a lot of analysis tools you can get that allow you to look at the stack in Java and the threads running, and to see if you've got any long-running threads, hung threads, memory leaks, objects that aren't getting garbage collected, all this sort of stuff. And I have actually done all that analysis on my application. I did a lot of it, obviously, to save memory, but a lot of it was to do performance improvement and find out, especially with the candle series and the data series, because they could be holding multiple series within inside of them. Plus, you've got all this event handling I have, where you're listening to multiple threads from the candle series itself and the strategy and the UI. So I've actually gone through the application and done a very good job that you won't see if you watch, on the database side. If you watch the pool, I think I allow the pool to have up to 10 connections, but you'll see when you've run a back test that all those connections get closed apart from the connection for the main thread, and you won't see any hanging threads or blocked threads in my application. I have found them, especially on the UI side. Swing is awful for spawning threads in the background that can hang on to objects and can be a pain in the arse, quite frankly, especially when you're binding objects from the UI layer all the way through to the database. But quite frankly, no, I don't have any hanging threads. I've run this application with enough test data and watched the heap to make sure the heap doesn't just continually grow and not get garbage collected, and I don't have hanging objects.
Shalom asked another question about validating market data and timestamps coming from IB.
You can't. How can you validate data coming in from IB? I'm lucky when I actually trade that I use IB and I use eSignal, and they both have separate data feeds. So I'm lucky that when we do get these hugely volatile days, and I was trading the day when the market crash happened, I was actually short. I had 4,000 shares of SSO. I don't know if any of you know what the SSO is. but it's basically the S&P 500 at twice the speed. And I was shorting that, and I'd had the position open for 3 or 4 days. When I do long-term trades, by the way, the only thing I trade is the S&P 500. So I've just got out of a 4-year position in the SSO that I had open. But I generally, if I am trading anything other than day trading, it will just be the S&P 500. But I can, because I have 2 separate data feeds running, I do see times when the bid asks, especially when you get these last prices coming in from dark pools, comes in outside of the bid ask. You start to see that a lot because, as most people know now, 40% of the volume on the market is going through dark pools, and we're starting to see in the market where we are having issues where the bid ask, the last sometimes isn't inside the bid ask. And as for, is the time stamp right? I'm hoping it is. They all seem to go in order, but who knows? Because you've got latency on the connection, you've got latency on your PC, you've got latency at IB, from IB servers to the market. There's just so many places this can happen. And what is there, 16, 18 electronic exchanges out there, and they're trying to consolidate all that information.
Yeah. Anybody else got any questions? Just type them up in the chat box. Oh, go ahead.
Use another. Yeah, he said use another data source.
Oh, yeah.
I do. As I say, I have I have eSignal and IB, but I'm lucky. A lot of the traders that I used to be in a couple of trading rooms, but I didn't find them useful, and they would have 50 or 60 members who would all be on different brokers. And IB seems to be one of the brokers that's one of the more stable brokers out there compared to a lot of the other brokers that I've heard about from other people that use it.
Yeah.
When I do see data discrepancies, it's usually e-signals behind interactive brokers. I find IB pretty reliable, but there again, I don't know because I haven't found another broker that's even more reliable than IB that I could compare to. So it's a catch-2 situation.
I know from my point of view, I all the people I talk to, the standard broker that everybody uses is IB. I'd say 2/3 at least. And then when it comes to data sources, everybody uses IB, but I personally prefer IT feed. That's going to be one of the questions. I'll leave that to the end. But Shalom's got another question about failover functionality.
Okay, failover, good question. Now, when my app goes down and reconnects, one of the interesting pieces of functionality that IB have created is when you connect to the client, what it does is it feeds through any open orders and it feeds through any executions that have happened during that day. And when I say that day, it can be any period of time you specify, but in my application, I actually ask it to send me through all the executions that have happened. And the way the API works is you connect with a client ID, and there's a master client ID. The master client ID is 0 generally, but that can be set to something other. And you can have up to 9 other client IDs. So you can connect with 9 TMs if you want to your IB client and number them 1 through 9. And you can tell it when you reconnect whether you want to get all the open orders for just that client ID and all the executions for just that client ID, or you want to get all the executions and open orders for the master, which will give you everything. And I do it for the master, and then I reconcile against the database. So I go through my database and look at all the open orders and look at the executions. I apply the executions, which can, fill some of the open orders. I check that open orders are still there on both sides. So if I get an open order from IB and I don't have it, then I know you've entered manually an open order directly into IB and I need to add it. And a pop-up will come up and say, do you want to add this order? Because it's been manually added. So, while TM crashed for some reason, you may have gone into IB and closed an order, added an order. I don't know what you've done, messed around. But what I try and do is I reconcile back to what I've got in my database versus what IB passes me when it connects. So it does that can do that reconciliation for you. Another interesting feature there is what that allows you to do is you can bring my application up. Say you've opened a position manually in IB and you're trading away, and then you want to go off to work, so you just want to start up a strategy that will manage an open position. Then you can start Trade Manager up, enter that contract in it, and there's a button there that says go. If you press go, what it will do is it will reconcile the open position in Interactive Broker Trade Workstation. So it will download that position into Trade Manager, and then you can tell it to start the strategy, and it will start your management strategy, which will manage that open position that you've downloaded that was originally created by you in Interactive Brokers. And I did that because I do that sometimes. If I get 7 o'clock and I'm sitting in a position that's, you know, sort of break even or making a bit of money and I'm fed up all day, I don't want to sit here watching it all day, I'll just start Trade Manager up, download the position into Trade Manager, and then run the management strategy and let it manage it for the rest of the day, and I can go off and do whatever I want.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
Anybody else got questions? Shalom says thank you. I'll throw my question in. So in order for me to add in, as I said, let's say IQ Feed as another data provider, I know you went through the code. Can I just easily inherit the base class and have 2 separate inherited base classes running?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, what it does is in there is, I need to find it, there's a configuration file somewhere. I'm trying to think.
No worries.
What I do is I have a configuration file, so it implements the abstract broker model and the broker model, and then there's a configuration file that you tell it what the implementation class is. Okay. So my implementation at the moment is TWS broker model. So you will change that value to be your new broker.
Yeah.
And from then on, it will use your class as the broker interface.
Okay.
So it's basically, if you've, I don't know whether you're familiar with Spring, and
how
Spring does dependency injection.
Yep. Okay.
Spring's a framework that 90% of Java shops use to build their applications on. And if you go into Java and look at patterns, the patterns we use to develop code, one of them is called dependency injection.
Right.
And what dependency injection allows you to do basically is on the fly change the implementation of an interface. So, you know, I can create a generic interface for a broker, and then the implementations I can switch at runtime just by changing the configuration value that will tell it to use this inherited class versus the one I'm using now. And I actually do that in the UI. If you look in the main controller, when it goes to back testing, it substitutes out the TWS broker model for the back test broker model.
Very nice.
And that's how you do it. So it's very easy. You could add, you know, as many as you want, and then it's just a configuration parameter that tells it which concrete class you want to implement at runtime. As your broker interface.
So technically, with TradeLink, one of the nice things I liked about it is that if I wanted to add in a second broker, but have 2 brokers connected at once in parallel, you can still do it with the way you architected, like via something like Spring, correct?
You could do, yeah. I haven't tried 2 brokers at the same time.
Yeah, like
that would be an interesting one. The reason I say it's interesting, coding-wise, it's not a problem, but it's how do you manage that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know TradeLink had that, and that was a pretty nice feature with TradeLink. So maybe I could...
They would connect to 2 different brokers at the same time. Yeah, I'd be interested to see, because I haven't thought about how you would manage that within the application.
Yeah, well, I can send you the link on that off of their Google Code. There's an example of how they do it from because it's very similar to what you have. That you have the strategy API framework that you provide. They have the same thing, and then you can literally have 2 broker connections at the same time. Have 2 separate objects for each broker, and then maybe there might be a better routing methodology.
Are they actually connecting at the same time?
I believe so. Yeah. I've tested it.
So how do you, when you write a strategy, how would you say, you know, which data do you look at?
I'll have to provide you the link for that.
Yeah, Yeah, that's the bit that starts getting confusing when you have multiple data feeds. But yeah, technically, it's doable.
Okay. I'm just looking for it right now. Yeah, I got it right here.
You see, I can see the case where you have a data feed, an interface for just data, and an interface for executing orders. So you get your data from a data provider, but to execute orders, you want to go through a broker. So then you're at the moment, whereas TWS provides one interface to do both those, execute orders and get data. I can see the case where you want to split out the broker functionality for executing orders from the data feed itself.
Right. Yeah, I provided in the chat box the example of how it's done in TradeLink. So if you want to take a look at that, and then we correspond offline.
If you could send me an email and a description of what they do.
Like I said, it's right now in the URL is in the chat box if you want to copy that, if you want to capture it.
Yeah. My issue would be is if your data provider is a lot better than your broker's data provider, you're going to be firing off orders to the broker and they wouldn't execute.
Yeah, I realize that.
So, especially in a high frequency trading world where it's all milliseconds. But
yeah.
As long as you're trading in time frames above 30 seconds or something like that, I don't think it's really an issue.
No. I've had another question. What if we use one feed for signals and another IB for execution fees, if that's possible?
Yeah, that at the moment that's not there, but it would be very easy for me. And the next rewrite I'm doing, I'm actually going to split the broker functionality out from the data feed. Because at the moment, if you look at that TWS model, it's got so many methods in there because it's doing, execution of orders as well as grabbing data feeds. It's just too much all in one place. So I want to split it out. So you've got broker functionality that's going to be all order related and getting account information related versus data feed, which should be in its own interface. That way you can connect to, a data feed that's someone else versus what your broker is.
Anybody else got any questions? Go ahead, Simon.
That makes sense. I was just going to say that breakout functionally makes a lot of sense to have it separate.
Anybody else got any questions? Time is not a factor at my end. I'm not sure about other people, but anybody else? Jeff says, thanks, Brian, for the presentation from San Francisco. Thanks, Jeff, for coming out. Anybody else got any questions at all? Simon, I'm like blown away. I mean, your quality of the code is so readable, which is really good. Another good benefit. Everyone says thank you.
Thanks.
It was excellent from Thomas. Ven said, Ven has a question. Maybe out of context, what is the lag time between each ticks that you pull from IB?
I would love to know. I mean, it is, how would I know? I know my IB data feed is faster than my eSignal, which is surprising because I know the eSignal servers are actually in Hayward, which is only about 20 miles away from where I live, whereas the Interactive Broker servers, I believe, are actually based very near the exchanges in New York and Chicago. But my data feeds seem to be a lot faster from IB than they are from eSignal. But there again, eSignal subscribing to probably in my case, 250 symbols all at once, whereas my Interactive Brokers, I use that specifically for trading, so I never subscribe to more than probably 15, 20 contracts at any one time.
We're getting a lot of thanks. Awesome, Simon. Thanks for the presentation for the code. Shalom says awesome presentation. So everyone is digging what you've got. I'm not alone, which is good, obviously.
Good. Well, if you guys come up with any ideas that you would like, any features you would like to see implemented that are common and would be used by other people, I'm happy to do those. I have done a lot of indicators for people, but as I say, anyone who's got some basic Java can write their own indicators and implement them. It's pretty straightforward. If you guys do want to do that, I'll write up a quick document on how to implement indicators. But it's all pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of brain surgery here. There's just a lot of code. There's a lot of functionality actually in the Interactive Brokers API. It's amazing how much they've opened up to allow you to use compared to other software that's out there. Things like TradeStation, Ninja. Most companies are trying to keep all that functionality within their client-side application themselves, so they have total control of it. They don't really want to open it up to other people.
Yeah. Anybody else got any questions before we wrap up? Just coming up to 2 hours. Just so you know, Simon, I just emailed that parallel broker example for TradeLink. Ben says, thank you so much, Brian, or Simon. Ivan asked about if you're moving to Java 8. I know you've already talked about, but if you want to...
It runs on Java 8 now, but yeah, the next rewrite, because I'm using Java XML, which is replacing Squig, lambdas are very useful in the context of the way the model view controller mapping works in Java XML. So when I do bring that version out, it will only run on Java 8 or above. The current version does run on Java 8 though.
So you're obviously running with Java 8. Are you, in your coding in the new version, are you taking full advantage of the new lambdas as well?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
For the FXML piece, and I'll also be using the date. If you look, I use calendar. There's a new class now called local date in Java 8, and local date is so much simpler than the Gregorian calendar. I mean, if you look, I've got a whole base class that has methods to add time, dates, because we do a lot of date manipulation, time manipulation in that Gregorian calendar, and I won't need that anymore because they've got an object called local time, which has all the feature sets that I need. It's much, much better, so that will cut a whole bunch of code out. There's things like you can have default methods now in interfaces in Java 8, so that helps out a bit in some areas. I won't have to put so much in abstract classes and implement interfaces. I can do it all just with an interface. There's a lot of stuff to do with streaming APIs in Java 8 for caching. None of that will be applicable from what I can see. I'm just trying to think of the other features in Java 8. Lambdas is probably the big one, purely because of Java FXML and the way it maps fields from the UI into the controls.
There's been comments here regarding. Well, let me just before we get on. What are you seeing a big performance boost between Java 7 and 8, and if so, like what's the percentage that you would expect between the current version and the new version that's coming out?
It's not noticeable.
Okay.
Quite frankly.
Okay.
There's so many other areas in applications that you can improve performance. The Mac question I get a lot. I know the current version I'm running, I haven't managed to get it to work on a Mac, but I don't have a Mac either. But I know there's been some of my friends who are Mac guys haven't managed to get it working on a Mac. And it's because of the version of Java that runs on a Mac, I believe. And it's in the Swing code that's not working the way Swing layer panels on top of each other and stuff. For some reason, the version of Java used in Mac just will not stack them correctly when it tries to build the GUI. But the good thing is it will work perfectly with the Java FXML that I'm doing.
There you go.
That is specifically designed to run on you can even run it on Android. You'll be able to run Trade Manager as is on Android.
That'll be awesome.
Have it working in Java FXML, because Java FXML, the engine will run on Android. I've actually seen a demo of it running on Android. Their full FXML demo running on an Android phone, which is amazing.
Yeah. I guess Shalom asked when the next version. You said roughly
2 to 4 months.
Yeah, but we know software engineering. We know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I could do a lot quicker. It's just because it's a refactor. It's not like it's super interesting for me to do.
Yeah. Anybody else got any questions for Simon at all? I'm impressed with it. I'll leave it at that. Really impressed. Anybody?
Well, thanks for the comments.
Oh yeah,
and I was good to to do the presentation. I hope you got something out of it.
Yeah.
It gives you a good starting point for whatever you're trying to achieve in trading. But you need to be a successful trader before you start automating what you trade, I think.
Yep, totally agree with that. Anybody else got any questions or comments? Anybody? No? I guess not. Well, I got to tell you, Simon, that video is going to be very helpful for a lot of people that are going to be taking on this project. I think you went right through it. It was awesome.
Good. Well, if you have any questions, as I say, don't hesitate to email me. And if you have any new features you'd like to see that look common, or if you find any bugs or things that you think could work better, the new UI might look a bit different to the one I have, where I have tabs. I might do it more like Eclipse, where you just have a single pane, and where you have the left on the tree, and then the right will have details about the tree, and the center will have the dashboard, and the bottom will just have the orders. So you can do it like that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
that.
And
then the reports and stuff, configuration stuff will just be pop-up windows that come out the main window. So I could do something like that, which would cause, make it a little less cluttered and save you having to switch between tabs, which is a bit painful.
So does that mean you'll be able to break out that tab and have it on its own independent area outside of the main console? If that makes sense?
Correct, yeah.
Oh,
there's
awesome.
a floating dialogue.
Yeah, that's a word I'm looking for.
The configuration tabs, which you never look at really. The strategy tab, the configuration tab, and even the portfolio to some extent. Those three could be pop-ups that pop up and are floating windows that you can drag off from the main window. So you can have, the portfolio. If you've got, like me, who's got 4 screens, you could have the trade manager in the middle, and then you could have the portfolio screen dragged off to the left, and the configuration to the right. But the configuration one you very rarely go into once you've set it all up.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be awesome. I got to say thanks a lot, Simon, for doing this. This was really, really mighty of you.
Okay.
Anybody got any final thoughts or comments, questions, or anything? Guess not. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for coming out. Thanks again, Simon. I really appreciate it. And there's going to be there's going to be a YouTube coming up. So I guess it's good night and good day for everybody. Thanks a lot for coming out, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks again, Simon. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night, all.
See you guys. Have a good one.